Joining us now is Karlin Borisenko. She is known for going undercover and infiltrating the radical woke left. She is an absolute expert on the trans death cult, Antifa, all of these things that are in the news right now. Karlin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me back. Always a pleasure.
Okay, trans death cult. Do you think, they're pointing at them as, or furries. I'm so confused as to what this Tyler Robinson was supposedly, what group he was a part of. They're saying that there's others who maybe were aware of this. They knew about it in advance. I just want to get your take on that angle of the Charlie Kirk assassination first.
Yeah, and I'm happy to talk about this. And actually, my opinion might be a little controversial, as I know you tend to be controversial as well, Kim. But I actually said from the beginning, before they even caught him, that when this information started coming out about the so-called trans symbols being on the weapons, I said flat out, this is not the queer Marxist, violent queer Marxist militant arm of the far left. The reason I know that is I'm literally writing a book about queer Marxism right now. I've been really embedded in this subculture for about 3 years. There are symbols that they use. They use things like pink triangles, pink and black flags. They wear pink and black. Those are their colors. And if you look at the symbology that was coming out, or that the police were saying were carved into these weapons, it has nothing to do with the queer Marxist militant far left that I've been studying. And so I knew from the very beginning he wasn't a part of that. Now, then it came out, of course, that he has this trans partner or whatever, and that partner is a furry. Well, that also doesn't align with the queer militant arm of the far left, because although they are really into a lot of weird sexual things with BDSM and leather and all that stuff, the weird sexual things that the far left is interested in usually tend to be around power dynamics, because they're obsessed with power dynamics. And so furry has never been a thing that I've seen show up on the far left. Now, of course, that is a weird thing, right? But just because someone is trans doesn't mean they're part of the militant violent arm of the far left, or gay, or whatever. And I do think that this is a case where I think these were young people. I think the shooter was obviously very mentally ill. I think he was from a Mormon family. He kind of like was rebelling against his Mormon family, got really leftist, got into some weird stuff, probably got into some weird video gaming culture. And I think that he formed really weird and perverse ideas through that. So I understand why people think this is part of the far left, and I understand why people think this is Antifa. I personally don't. And I think people need to be a little bit more nuanced about the situation.
So you think that he was just, it's hard to pinpoint him, right? That's the
Yeah.
issue, is it's been difficult to pinpoint exactly what his viewpoints were. He did grow up in a really conservative family, clearly liked guns, Republican. He even had, I guess, an online gaming, his name for one of the games was actually Donald Trump, was one of the names for, yeah, and so people didn't know how to take that. Like, was he a fan of Donald Trump, or is he against Donald Trump? In this subculture, because some people say, well, no, if he's obviously, trans or a furry, he can't possibly like Donald Trump. But I have some trans friends who absolutely support Donald Trump. So that's
Oh
not
yeah,
like
absolutely. Yeah.
mutually exclusive.
No, actually, you do not need to be gay or queer to be part of the militant, or gay, excuse me, do not need to be gay or trans to be part of the militant queer far left. You can actually be a straight white man and be part of it, because queer is a political identity. It's a far left political identity that wants to overthrow the government, destabilize gender norms, destabilize the nuclear family, things like that. And so I really do look at this kid, and I think he was a young kid that, so I was talking with someone the other day in a Twitter space, and they were telling me that within kind of like and I don't know that much about Mormonism. Maybe you know more than me. I don't know.
I do.
Was told.
I was
So
Mormon
you
for
might.
many years,
So
so I
so
actually
you
know a
might
lot
know.
about it. Yeah.
Well, have you seen this thing then, where like when young Mormon kids kind of leave the nest, they kind of rebel against it and they get militantly leftist for a little while? Because someone was explaining to me that's a thing within the Mormon community.
No, that's not a
No.
thing.
Okay.
No.
Maybe
No,
I'm just making
certainly
that up then.
no, yeah, certainly a lot of people leave. Many of my friends, I was Mormon for many years, from the time I was about 14, 15 until I was about 30. Very
Hmm.
active Mormon. And no, a lot of my friends have left the church, and they're not at all, they're still very conservative. They're still Republicans. They just don't want to, they just want to go to a bar and drink, and they want to have sex outside of marriage. That's kind of, maybe they like coffee. There's Mormonism is, I would say, it's obviously very restrictive of what you can and cannot do. But I don't see it when people rebel. I don't see them really I don't see that. I don't see them
Well,
going and becoming like totally wild and crazy.
maybe it's like a third thing then, because I was kind of thinking this with the Catholic Church shooter as well, because I also do not believe that the Catholic Church shooter was part of the militant far left at all. I know there was some language on the weapons that made it seem that way, but he doesn't follow any of the indicators. And so now we have the Catholic Church shooter and we have Charlie Kirk's assassin that are both behaving like they're doing this transgender bending thing. They seem to be part of like meme culture on the internet. Maybe there is an emergent subculture that we don't really know about yet that is kind of a breeding ground for this type of violent extremism.
Hmm. What did you think of the text messages?
I didn't look, I thought they seemed very scripted, to be honest. I was like, I read it, I was like, this is fake. This is not how people talk.
Or yeah, or like people on the left. I mean, I just don't know if in your infiltration of these circles
No.
are these kids text messaging like this and sounding like this?
Not at all. And I actually spend a lot of time reading militant queer literature and stuff like that. Like I have actually a whole bunch of it like sitting on my desk right now. I have all their stuff. And so I spend a lot of time reading this. When the left is writing, they do have a certain cadence about how they write. They use a certain type of language. I did not see that in the text messages at all. It seemed very contrived to me. It seemed kind of like putting on a play.
So, okay, maybe this kid is not part of this like trans death cult that people are wanting. Well, but then you've got all these messages because people are going to say, "But Carlin, come on now." There's all these messages that are out there. People seem to have foreknowledge of the shooting. They said things like, "Charlie," they didn't say Charlie Kirk, but they said September 10th something's going to happen, or there's this big investigation. Cash Patella said that they're talking to many different people, investigating many different people, and it looked like there was some organization or some knowledge of this.
Maybe, but you guys also have to understand that the left says and does stuff like that literally all the time around almost every major conservative influencer. So like if you go to like to Blue Sky or in any of these leftist circles, anytime someone is coming around campus or doing things like that, there's always threats. There's always threats on Reddit. There's always people acting like there's something going to happen. So is that an organized conspiracy or is that people mouthing off on the internet? I don't know the answer to that. It's certainly worth investigating and looking into because I think there are still a lot of questions that I have about this whole thing. But I've also I think it's very easy to cherry pick one thing and say, oh, they're making violent threats. They make violent threats all the time.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Trump and his going after Antifa.
All right.
Um, okay. So there's a big debate. Is Antifa an actual organization with, that's like, you can actually crack down on it like terrorism, or is it an idea like MAGA? Or, like there's a variety of different political ideas out there. Is it an idea, or do you think that it's an actual organization that can be cracked down on?
Well, the Trump administration is going to have a hard time with this one, and I know people aren't going to like this, but Antifa is not a centralized organization. I think when people are saying Antifa is just an idea, it's not quite that simple. Antifa is an organization, but it is a highly decentralized organization filled up with probably at least 1,000, if not more, decentralized cells all over the country. There are some cells that call themselves Antifa, like Rose City Antifa. That's one of the most famous ones, but the vast majority of what I would consider to be Antifa organizations do not call themselves Antifa. They might call themselves something like a distro. They might call themselves an info shop. They might call themselves a collective. They might make up some other name, but there is no organization. There is no membership list. And this is the part that's really going to piss people off. There is no funding. George Soros is not funding these people. USAID is not funding these people. Antifa funds themselves via mutual aid. They steal stuff off the streets or they fund themselves via small donations. And I don't know how the Trump administration is going to track small donations that are usually made in cash across a highly decentralized network with no membership list where he doesn't even know the naming convention that they use for their cells. So there is organization, but it's very complicated.
What? Yeah, like how? So how does it work? Like I've never. I mean, and I've lived in
Yeah.
major liberal cities, and I've never been approached to join Antifa. I don't even know where you'd begin.
Well, you know what's actually funny? I accidentally ran into Antifa in Boston a couple months ago. I was there covering the Boston Pride Parade, and my husband and I were out on the Boston Common one night looking for a place to go to dinner. And I literally ran into an Antifa table. And that's how I know the name of the Antifa in Boston, because I ran into them tabling and handing out their literature. They had a giant Antifa flag. They had all their propaganda and stuff like that. And that's how I knew the name of the organization. So sometimes it really is by accident. But, a project that I'm working on right now, Kim, is I've just started a nonprofit called the Center for left-wing studies, where I'm actually trying to work on mapping the modern activist left to give people a sense of like, here are the organizations, here's what the names are, here's where they're located. All this information does exist online, but it is extremely complicated to find it and put it all together. And I don't think that anyone has done a really good job of it so far. So I'm trying to fix that problem.
So then how would you crack down on it? Like if you were in charge, what would you do?
Okay. Well, I don't know all the legal parameters around this, but in my ideal world, how I would define Antifa is anyone who shows up to any sort of protest or public event in black bloc or with a weapon or with an umbrella or something like a black bloc umbrella where they're trying to use it as a weapon. I would say you are designated as part of this organization if you are engaging in this behavior. And then I would arrest them and I would throw them in jail and I would treat them just like the January 6th defendants. And that might be a little bit fascist of me, and I understand that. And, I do, in my heart of hearts, I'm a libertarian, but when it comes to actually solving problems, I do firmly believe we need to get these people off the streets, because if they are on the streets, they're organizing and they are planning their next direct action. And so I
Mhm.
think that Trump should figure out a way to identify these people based on their visible behaviors, like dressing up in black bloc, being violent in public, and then throw them in jail and make them sit there just like the January 6th defendants had to sit there, and prolong things as much as possible so you keep them off the streets and you prevent them from organizing.
Yeah, I hear you, but I also see a lot of problems in that. I mean, and the
I know,
biggest
I do
problem,
too. I do
yeah,
too. Okay.
especially like the minute if you say, well, you can't show up to a protest with a weapon, you're going to have a lot of Second Amendment people saying, wait a minute, if I have the right to carry my weapon and I want to be able to go out to a protest, and why can't I have my weapon and instead maybe I'll be classified as a terrorist? I mean, once President AOC is in power, right? I mean, right now with Trump being in power, he could say, okay, it's the black bloc and the umbrellas, but when it's President AOC, it's going to be red hats and guns, right? I mean, so
I completely agree. Yeah.
yeah, they'll just switch it back and forth over and over. I mean, that's the problem with um, it's the problem with the free society. It's the problem with the democracy. I mean, we want these things. We want the free society. We want the democracy. But even Charlie Kirk himself said there's going to be casualties. If we have a free society with guns, then there will be people who get shot with guns from time to time. I mean, that's what happens. And unfortunately, he was a victim of that. But I agree fundamentally with that point. I mean, it's when you have a free society, you just have to take the good with the bad. I mean, you have to take the bad part of it too. And that is sometimes you have to put up with the unknown of like, maybe these protesters show up and they're actually really truly violent, or how can you tell them the difference between them and versus those who show up and they're peaceful protesters, but they just happen to have the ability to carry a weapon. I
Yeah.
mean,
And
it
in my
gets
heart of
tricky.
hearts, I totally agree with you. Actually, I see a lot of problems with this as well. And this is what makes this such a complicated issue, and why I really hope the Trump administration is thinking this through, because it's not as cut and dry as I think a lot of people think. They think they're going to find one big funding source. That's not going to happen. They think they're going to find organizational leadership. That's not going to happen. This doesn't operate like a hierarchy. And so, yeah, I completely agree. But I do fundamentally believe, though, I meant when I said, when I say that I do think that these people are trying to overthrow the government, if we care about protecting the country as an institution, sometimes sacrifices have to be made. This is a violent militant arm of the far left. They do want to overthrow the federal government. I do believe they're going to try to do it at some point. And I do think that tough decisions have to be made in order to prevent that.
What do they want? What's
They
their
want to
vision?
overthrow the United States.
But what's their
They want to
vision? Like,
overthrow the um a world with no government, no courts, no police, no money. They want kind of like collective decision making. So collective decision making about who gets food, who gets energy. They don't want private property ownership. So you won't own your house, you won't own your land. They don't want parental rights over your kids. They want kids to be raised by the collective. So yeah, they literally do want to overthrow the government and abolish the Constitution, because they believe all of those things are grounded in capitalism. I have them on video saying this many, many times, but they want a Marxist society. That is what they're going for.
who is attracted to this ideology? Because I don't know anybody in Antifa. Well, okay, I take that back. I
Well,
think I might have one family member, really young, like young family members who are kind of into that world right now. But it's kind of, in my mind, it's a phase. They'll grow up, they'll grow out of it. It's kind of, when you're in your early 20s, maybe you think like that, but then reality hits later on. So I don't know who's actually attracted to this form of thinking.
I think that there was a time when they grew out of it, but I think that time has kind of passed because a lot of people on the far left have been indoctrinated into the far left via the public schools since they were 5 years old. And this is when with the younger people, because this material has been in schools pretty strongly for the last 20 to 30 years. And I think that, a lot of people have really dropped the ball on what's getting taught in schools and what's being integrated into these lessons, because by the time these kids graduate from high school, they're already kind of like accustomed to this anti-capitalist, anti-assimilationist ideology. And then you send them to college, and then it's really off to the ballpark because they recruit heavily in college. There's a lot of academics that are in Antifa. There's a lot of college professors, high school professors. I mean, the teachers' unions are integral in all this. The teachers' unions are a massive part of leftist organizing. I see them on leftist organizing calls literally all the time. And honestly, I think one of the most productive things we could do is I want to see congressional hearings into the political organizing activity of the unions, not just the teachers' unions, all the unions, because the unions are going to be a really big problem when it comes to pushing this far left ideology.
So you're saying that Antifa is just it is a way of thinking. It's not so much an
Yep.
organization as it is an ideology. Are all of the cells that are around the country, are they even linked at all?
Yes. So how they're linked is through different communication networks. So I was just reading on my channel, I was reading the Antifa response to the Trump administration declaring them a terrorist organization. That's published by an organization called CrimeThink. CrimeThink is the main publishing arm of Antifa. So if you have a massive network of decentralized cells, you have these main publishing arms, and there are more than just CrimeThink, but that's the main one, where when they have something they want to disseminate out to all of the cells, they publish it on these websites, and that way all the cells get the talking points. Now, this is not a top-down leadership directive, but it's kind of saying, here's what we're thinking, here's how we're thinking about the strategy, here's how we're organizing, and here are the things we think you guys need to know. And so that's how they kind of coordinate, is in a decentralized manner.
Oh, don't say that too loudly, Carlin, because you
Oh
already know
no.
you already know where that's headed. If it's like, oh, it's this crime think, basically their press, their journalism, right? And they're putting
Mhm.
out information for this network of people. And you know that if you say that, if you point them out, then the Trump administration, the next thing you know, is going to be going after crime think. And then that is going to be an assault on journalism fundamentally, ultimately. Like if they're
Yeah.
just giving information out, if they're publishing information, you can't criminalize that and say they're not allowed to do that just because you don't like the people that happen to read their publication.
I
But
mean,
that's
listen,
where,
CrimeThink is one of many. Yeah, CrimeThink is one of many places. They publish pamphlets like this, these zines that they hand out all over the country. I pick these up at Antifa events like all the time. Like you can pick up zines on literally anything. I have a zine that teaches me how to use a crowbar to break down a house or take over a house and things like that. So they teach people a lot of illegal stuff with these zines. That's one of the ways they do it. They publish via anarchist websites. I mean, the fact of the matter is the Trump administration is never going to be able to shut down the publishing of it because there is a massive network of anarchist websites that also disseminate this information. It's a really tricky problem to have to deal with, and I think that that's purposeful. And it's funny in the Antifa response to Trump, they're kind of going neener, neener, neener. You can't stop us. In the response, they're like, we literally built our organization so that you guys couldn't stop us, and they've been doing this for decades to build this strategic organization that exists outside the system. And I think we're about to see the result of that.
okay, but from a realistic perspective to those on the right who are freaking out about this, what percentage
Yeah.
do you think of like leftists are actually part of Antifa?
It's extremely hard to say, but I think more than they think. And I think that they've been recruiting at a clip ever since Trump got inaugurated into office, because what they've been doing is they've been specifically targeting obviously like disaffected Democrats and liberals, but also members of the DSA. Because remember, Antifa is much farther left than the DSA. The DSA is a walk in the park compared to these people. And so they've been targeting people to recruit them and radicalize them to the far left. And by the way, and I think you might appreciate this, the Palestine-Israel issue has been one of their main recruiting apparatuses to get people radicalized to the far left, because people are really pissed off at the Trump administration for how they're handling Israel. They're also really pissed off at the Democratic Party for how they're handling it, how no one is speaking out against the genocide in Gaza. And that has been a very big recruiting tactic for them for the last couple of years. And so I think that it's difficult to assess how many people we're talking about, but I think the problem is much bigger than most people understand.
Yeah, but I would say that a lot of the people who are against Israel and wanting to help the Palestinian people, I don't think that they're Marxists who want to take over and have no government, no courts, and just pure lawlessness.
You know, I was undercover with Antifa over the weekend in New York City, and one of the things I picked up at this queer bookstore, I don't know if you can see it. This is a teeny tiny little Queers for Palestine brochure, and so I do agree with you that not everyone that supports Palestine is a Marxist. Of course, there are a lot of people that support Palestine that aren't Marxists, but a lot of Marxists are using the issue. I actually had the DSA on video talking about how they use the pro-Palestine issue specifically to get people to vote for Zoran Mandami in New York City. They were reaching out and recruiting at mosques and stuff like that because they were politicizing an issue the Democratic Party weren't politicizing. So, and this is also another thing too, that for people who are very anti-war and who do not like how the Trump administration is handling the issue with Palestine, I've seen people on my channel that are anti-communist that are kind of like, well, maybe the left has a point with this, Carlin. And I'm kind of like, no, don't go over to the left because you agree with them on this issue. You don't agree with them for the same reason, but this is something that is a highly effective talking point for them.
Yeah. I mean, being able to recruit, I guess, using anything, but I don't know what they're recruiting them into if there's no real organization.
They're recruiting them into a social network. And so what the left is it's set up as a social ecosystem where they do educational events together. There are massive amounts of bookstores all over the country where they have events where they're meeting authors, they're reading books together, they're doing different organizing activities. This is a social ecosystem. So it's not an official organization in that there are membership lists and things like that, but it's kind of like you're showing up and hanging out with your friends and you're doing political organizing with your friends and you're going to protest with your friends and things like that. So that's what they're buying into. And I'll tell you, as someone who's, again, been undercover with these people, it's actually a really fun environment to be in when they think you're on their side.
Because they're nice, they're friendly.
Oh, yeah. They accept everyone. They're not going to make fun of you. They're not going to kick you out. They're going to bring you in. They're going to teach you all their stuff. They're going to show you their books. They're going to get you involved in protests. You're all going to chant together and do all that. And so, yeah, it's really fun.
Well, so then that doesn't sound like, I mean, this is the problem with, and I guess what you've been pointing out on your channel and with your work is Antifa is not an organization. I mean, it sounds like you could almost label any leftist sort of ideology as Antifa almost.
Kind of not. I mean, there are certainly very far left groups that are not Antifa, that are not going to go out and be violent in the world, but they're still pushing extremely far left ideas. I just went inside a revolutionary socialism conference a couple weeks ago in which I recorded a college professor at Texas State University openly calling to overthrow the federal government. And so he's not a member of Antifa. He's just an academic that is pontificating on the internet, but he is calling for the overthrow of the government. And a lot of them do that. And so, again, this is an extremely complicated issue for the Trump administration. I don't know exactly how they're going to designate people being part of Antifa because there are a lot of leftist groups that will be able to make the case in court that they are
Hmm.
not Antifa, even though they're on the far left.
Yeah, it seems like if you don't like the idea, I mean, people are being attracted to these ideas for a reason, and that's really, I think, the what has to be addressed is why are people being attracted to these ideas? They're unhappy with the current way things are.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assessment, right? Like, should there be changes that are made by our government officials that, um, if you think people are going too radical, it's because they're feeling like every time they try to do something more moderate, nothing happens, nothing changes. And so now people are feeling, well, then you just have to go and completely be extreme in order to get any change done, maybe whatsoever. So maybe, instead of trying to crack down on the actual organization, throwing people in jail, labeling them terrorists, saying you're not allowed to, telling a journalist outlet maybe you're not allowed to publish, or saying to people you're not allowed to organize, this would all be a crackdown on our civil liberties. Um, Maybe it would be better to actually combat the ideas themselves with other ideas. I mean, I feel like a lot of Americans now are really sick of the trans stuff. I think that the pendulum has swung quite a bit to where normal, I mean, I just anecdotally, I have people in my own life that really were pushing the trans stuff, and they were kind, nice people. They weren't pushing it because they were Antifa or crazy leftists. They just thought we should just accept everybody. And, they were like the bleeding heart liberal of like, okay, everybody's different and some people have this kind of thing going on and we should just accept it and not question it and not, it's coming from a good place. Um, and now that same group of people is kind of like, oh no, this has gone way too far. Like kids should not be transitioned. We should not be pumping them full of hormones. Like those same group of people are now starting to shift. So I feel like the pendulum is swinging with the general public on, yeah, this has gone too far. So, and that's just from when things go too far, people tend to push it back into the middle. and bad ideas being combated with good ideas.
I mean, I do think there is something to that, but I think also people need to understand that one of the reasons the left is so compelling to a lot of people is it is a very artistic, creative subculture, and I do think that that's one of the things that draws people in: art, music, like weird fashion, weird kind of like discussions that they're having and stuff like that. And we don't really have a counterbalance to that on the right to give people something to do that is a little bit more creative. In fact, the right tends to shun creativity altogether. So where do you want those people to go? They're going to go to the far left. But I also think there's something to be said about a lot of people are really struggling. They're struggling financially and they don't perceive the right to be helping them out. They don't perceive Trump to be helping them out. Do you know who does help them out? The left. When they come with mutual aid, they come with diapers, they come and with baby formula, they come with groceries. If you need something and you're on the far left, there is probably a mutual aid organization that is going to help you get that thing. And then who are you going to have allegiance to? Are you going to have allegiance to the right, who kind of tells you pull yourself up by the bootstraps and go get a job, you lazy narcissist that just wants everything given to you for free? Or are you going to go to the people who are just like giving you help? And it's not that the left is asking for a handout, but it's kind of like someone who gives you a little bit of help is going to be preferable over someone that's saying you're lazy, go get a job.
Right, right. So where do you think the right is headed? Because I'm actually, though I've seen the left be really crazy, and they've gone off the deep end, as you've very well put out there on your own channel. The right is starting to scare me too. I mean, they seem to be going
Yeah.
in a radical direction also.
The right is terrifying me because there's so many people on the right now that I think are completely unhinged from reality. I think that people need to start logging off of Twitter because Twitter, I think, is going to be the great destroyer of the right because there is so much misinformation and people get into these echo chambers. They get all riled up. And then once they get riled up, you can't convince them, even with evidence, that they're wrong. And so I think that people need to start by hinging back into reality, looking at what's happening in the real world. And I do think the right, the one of the biggest challenges on the right is I don't know what their vision is. I don't know how they're going to help me. I don't know how they're going to make the world better for me because the right is in a constant reactionary mechanism against the left where it's just like whatever
Mhm.
the left does is bad and we're going to do the opposite. That's not a vision for the country and that's not leadership and that's not something that people can get behind. I also think that Trump is not fulfilling his promises in terms of deporting people and all that stuff that he said he was going to do. The left is kind of preventing him from doing that because they're constantly attacking ICE vehicles and that sort of stuff. But I am worried about the direction of the right. Like I want, like personally me, and I say this as someone who is vehemently anti-leftist as much as you can be. I don't want anything to do with the GOP or the conservatives right now because they're just as bad in my eyes.
What is it specifically that you think they're doing that is bad?
I think that they're just completely unhinged from reality with what's going on in the world and with how people are perceiving things and with how things are and with what the left is doing. And it's just all talking points. I also think that I do not like the amount of power that Israel has in this country. I do not like the amount of money that we're sending to Israel and our involvement in the Middle East. I think we need to get out of that. And I am so sick of anti-Semitism hearings and anti-Semitism speech crackdowns. I can't even tell you. It's like no one cares. Like I am so like, can we please have a hearing into the political organizing activities of the unions, please? I don't need another anti-Semitism hearing or a lecture on how I need to be nice to Benjamin Netanyahu. I actually want the Trump administration to focus on what is going on in America right now.
Yeah, they're terrifying me because I think that they're doing all the exact things that they rallied against the left that I hated the left for. And now the right is literally doing those exact same things. The cancel culture, like the administration pressuring companies to fire people. I mean, that was all the stuff that made many of us who were independent say, hey, Republicans right now are the good guys. Like vote Republican. The liberals have just completely lost the plot. And now a lot of us independents are sitting there looking at the right like, okay, wait a minute. We supported you, and I'm an independent. We supported you because we thought that you were going to bring back free speech. And instead, you're just cracking down on speech, censoring, labeling groups terrorists. I mean, then when President AOC gets into power, which I think inevitably at some point she will be, she's going to use all of these tools that have been used, that all of these tools that have been created by the right, labeling Antifa terrorist organizations. What do you think she's going to do the minute she gets into power? MAGA is a terrorist organization. I mean, there's going to be all the tools that the right is creating. And now the right will say, well, no, the left created them, because the left did it first. And it's like, okay, so is the way forward then that we all just devolve into ruining civil liberties and ruining democracy? Or should we instead, set the example and say, actually, this is where it should be and you need to rise up rather than sinking down to their level? I mean, that's terrifying me right now, is that we'll have nowhere to go because both sides will be sitting there doing the exact same tit for tat tactics.
Yeah, I agree with a ton of that stuff. And I got to say, listen, I am truly sad about the death of Charlie Kirk. I really am. And I understand why people are angry. But there is something that really rubs me the wrong way about this database that's coming out with all the names of the people who said something online that someone else didn't like. And I thought the same thing when the Trump assassination attempt happened, where they were going after I have this distinct memory of like libs of TikTok doxing a cashier at Home Depot because of a Facebook post. And I'm like, this is a minimum wage cashier at Home Depot, like an older lady who probably isn't even involved in any of this stuff. And you're doxing her, you're sending people to go film her. Like, it's just like, it's really gross, disgusting behavior. And so I think like civility and bringing back people that are just like, you don't have to agree with people and you can think people's speech is abhorrent, but when you're stalking them at their workplace and doxing them and trying to get them fired and all this stuff, I understand that you're angry, but this is not going to solve the problem.
No, and it doesn't make you any better than the other side, right? Just say, well, they did it, so now they're getting a dose of their own medicine. Okay, great. So we're all just a bunch. So we're all terrible. That's basically what it boils down to. Carlin, thank you so much for being here and giving us your insight into the radical left. I know you've been infiltrating them for a really long time. Tell us what you're working on and where people can find more of your work.
Yeah, you can find my work at decodetheleft.com. I'm working on a book about queer Marxism right now. I'm also working on a socialist dictionary that will hopefully be up on my website very soon. And you can follow my work on YouTube, on Twitter, all that stuff. So I'm on all the different platforms and no one else has my name. So you should be able to find me.
Well, we do have a couple of the links down below. So Carlin, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.